Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Stuart Russell and this is Ross Live 2020. It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's Tech Talk. It is Tuesday, July the 7th, and today we're going to be talking about the dynamic world of esports. Esports may have started out as a cottage industry, but it has quickly developed into a global phenomenon that is worth billions of dollars every year and has made big stars out of some of its best players. Joining us to talk about that world, which will be complete bafflement to anyone over the age of 50, I'm sure, is Cameron Reid, a man who's steeped in this business. He is Ross Video's business development for esports. Hi, Cameron, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Sorry, I make you sound like a tea bag that's been left in for too long. But anyway, just before I let Cameron loose on you all, here is my regular reminder that all of our Tech Talks are being recorded and are available to watch on demand at rossvideo.com/. You can also, /live, sorry, you can also find the full program schedule, the remainder of the program schedule on that same page. We only have a few more Tech Talks left after this one, so have a look at that page for what's left. If you have any questions during the course of this presentation, please don't be shy. We do always enjoy hearing from you. You can place your questions into the questions box on the right-hand side of the screen, and we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webcast. As always, more information is available on rossvideo.com, and you can join in the conversation on all of the usual social media platforms. Cameron, it's over to you. Take us away.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Hi, I'm Cameron Reid, Esports Business Development Manager for Ross Video. I started with the company last year after a bit of time doing some freelance, and been trying to help the company grow this exciting new market that is esports. And the kind of main thing that we're always trying to do in esports is very similar to what we're always trying to do in any sort of sports or entertainment, and that's create a memorable experience. And at Ross, we're trying to do that as well for our clients. As you saw in the intro, on the sports and live events team, which is a group that has a total mixture of sales and technical people who understand the total solution and are able to work with clients all the way from the inception and idea of creating a new project, a new arena, to the sales process, to then integrating and helping in that way to make sure with event support that everything's going as smoothly as it ought to go. Every one of us has sort of had a career before we started with Ross doing production, and so we really sort of understand where our clients are coming from and what their challenges are. So a little bit of background about myself and my career to this point. I started where we probably all started as a production assistant. That was in 2012 for an esports show here in the LA area. And to give you an idea of how quick things can move in esports, my first directing job was in 2014, and it was for BlizzCon, which is no pressure really, right? It is one of the biggest gaming events of the year, every year. And that was my first directing job, professionally at least. I'd done it in college, but yeah, that was the first paid job, and it worked out. I would go on to direct many of the largest esports events in the world, Intel Extreme Masters, ESL Ones. I've directed at Madison Square Garden, SAP Center, huge arenas, big events, national television for the Madden NFL Championships, which were aired on the NFL Network and ESPN2. And then, like I said earlier, I joined Ross Video as the Esports Business Development Manager last year. Now, I don't say any of this to impress anybody so much as I say it to impress upon you that esports has some fundamental needs that I've found in my experience when it comes to the technology that we use. The first is it's got to be high impact, high efficiency. And what do I mean when I say that? Well, budgets in esports, as large as we've become, do tend to be a bit more modest. We tend to be a little bit more punk rock in our sort of attitude and the way of getting things on the air. But we are still under the same amount of pressure that you would be under to do any sort of live major production. It's got to look like the real deal, right? The next is it has to be easy to use. The reason for that is that it's gamers who know how to tell these stories. And I'll get more into this later, but without someone who really knows the game that you guys are covering in esports, you're not going to be able to tell the story to your core audience. The challenge there is that most of the gamers haven't spent 15 years in broadcast trucks or control rooms learning how to use the equipment. So we have to have tools for those gamers that are intuitive and easy to understand, easy to use. And the last thing is you've got to have a flexible and scalable solution. The reason for that is that esports runs this wide gamut of video games with a wide gamut of technical needs and requirements, number of players. So if you're an esports arena, an esports production company, you may be on Wednesday night doing a 1v1 fighting game or a card game or something like that, Street Fighter, Magic the Gathering, Arena. And then Friday night, you might be doing a 150 player free-for-all in a game like PUBG or Fortnite. And so you need one solution that can scale quickly to do the more complicated stuff and scale down to be economical for you operationally when you're doing the more simple, smaller scale productions. And so those are kind of, again, in my experience, the three most important things when considering production technology for an esports arena or production company. We'll talk a little bit at first here. I'll go over all three of them, but we'll talk first about high impact, high efficiency, okay? In a traditional sort of model, you've got these sort of three islands that there's not a tremendous amount of interconnectability between them. So in a normal arena setting, you've got a production control room where they have replays and graphics and they're doing the main sort of production in the arena. And then that would be sort of connected to a display control system of high-end AV gear. But any synchronization would have to be manually coordinated because they're on totally different systems. And then on an even further island away from that, you would have your broadcast truck or van that would roll in to do the actual on-air broadcast. And there's very little connectivity in a traditional sort of model, where if there are going to be any coordinated efforts between all three of these, they have to be very carefully planned and manually triggered. Our solution is able to bring all three of those together into a single unified workflow by blending the control room, the display control system, and the broadcast truck. It allows them to really sort of get very creative in terms of being able to utilize the screens in the venue instead of having to avoid shooting the screens in the venue. And now also, because everything's handled on professional broadcast equipment instead of this sort of high-end AV gear, it also unlocks real production value for these in-arena presentations. The last sort of point too, and this is especially important for esports, as I sort of mentioned earlier, with more modest budgets typically than you would see in big sports, big entertainment, by being able to bring it all together with a single sort of control, unified, that has a condensed workflow, we're also able to save our clients a lot of money operationally and be a little more friendly to some of those more modest budgets. The other great thing about our solution, when we talk about that scalability, is that you can control it from as many control points as you want. And more on this later, but that's thanks to Dashboard. Dashboard is a totally customizable user interface to control virtually limitless devices within the ROS workflow, as well as a number of third-party devices. So our idea was, rather than being pigeonholed into a certain number of staff and a certain number of positions based on the technology you've got, why not have the production that you're trying to do determine how many staff and how many positions you're going to need? And so by being able to control more than one device with a simple dashboard, we're able to scale that up very quickly, just even as quickly as different nights of the week for many of our clients. So an example of this in action. So in December of 2019, ROS Production Services partnered with OGN. OGN is one of the earliest esports production companies in the world. They got started in South Korea to produce the Clash Royale World Finals. Clash Royale World Finals had some unique challenges. First, it had to have multi-language keying for their broadcast graphics, in addition to localized playback of all like their commercials, all of their features and storytelling pieces. But again, modest budget. They only had budget for one technical director, one CG, and one replay. So we had to come up with clever ways to be able to do all of that with just a single person at each one of those positions. They also had a pretty complicated front-end LED display control production decided upon, but it had to be unified with that broadcast because they didn't, again, have the budget to staff an arena display control staff as well as a broadcast staff. We had to bring it all together for them. And then lastly, they needed to automate their stats using the game's data stream, the game API. Clash Royale, as I'll show you in a few slides, is a lot like baseball when it comes to there's a lot of things to keep track of. And so they needed smart tools that would enable all of that to just be automated and not have any statisticians having to do any math or anything like that in the background. Oops. So what I'll go ahead and do now is I'll show a little bit of a video of how we were able to do that, and then I'll expand upon it in a bit.
We're here at the Clash Royale League World Finals at the legendary Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles, an amazing venue. The technology is here to do is to enable the creative folks to do what they do best and to bring these moments to life and to send those moments out to all the people watching at home in really creative and unique ways. You're going to see a lot of that here today, and we couldn't be more proud to be the provider of the technology that enables all of that. All right, here we go!
4, 3, 2, 1, roll it, clear CG.
On the show, I'm the technical director. I was also responsible for building out the LED package for the boards inside the venue, and as a part of that, integrating all the different expressions and all of the other ROS equipment that we have on the show, and making that all work together.
We're using Ultrix and Open Gear platform for the connectivity and the glue, switching it with Carbonite. Graphics are provided by Expression Tessera, and Mosaic are doing all the LED boards that you're gonna see throughout the event today. And we're also using Mira for replay. It's a truly end-to-end ROS solution, and it's gonna do some really cool stuff.
We're using 3 different expression engines on this show, and then you'll see, behind me we've got some various different dashboard control panels that are controlling everything, using the ARVS tool set with UX and VCC to collect tracking data from our track cameras. So on this show, we're actually doing 2 configured jibs and a configured man camera in the balcony. So it's a 3-channel augmented reality supplement to the graphics package. So it's pretty exciting.
All of the stats graphics that you're gonna see today are provided automatically by a game API that will take the data from the game, translate it into a JSON that Expression can get its hooks into and start populating graphics automatically.
You're going to get more of a streamlined production. So it's a lot of the best of ROS is coming through, starting with the technical director who's able to also, not only punch the show, he's controlling the LED. Our graphics operator as well is doing multi-language feeds. So again, it's the best of ROS condensing workflows that we're most proud of.
Right now we're using 2 expressions together to generate 3 channels of identical graphics, each channel in a different language. We are doing English, Spanish, and Portuguese. So we're using ROS Talk, which is a sort of a protocol used to talk between the machines, and we're using heavy data link integration to make the swaps easy and painless, and for everything to play out all together in harmony.
All right, so yeah, like the video had mentioned, we had the total ROS end-to-end solution for this particular show. That can, oh, let me go back a slide here. That consisted of Ultrix for the connectivity, OpenGear, Expression and Expression Tessera, Expression doing broadcast inserts and the screens in the venue, Carbonite for switching, and Carbonite Mosaic for image processing on the screens in the venue. We're using a Mira replay server, and we were using tracked data from tracking cameras for the AR display. By bringing it all together with the single unified workflow, not only were we able to save them money operationally, like I've mentioned a few times, but we were also just able to offer them levels of support and customer service that you wouldn't be able to get from a multi-vendor solution. Kind of like one neck to ring, right, is the idea right there. The nice thing too about this solution is that this was sort of a very bespoke solution for this production that we needed to do. We can scale this to any size up or down from what we did here to achieve really high quality results regardless of the production. There's a few optional add-ons that they could have gone with. Piero, for example, is our analysis tool, our graphical analysis tool. Piero allows you to do really in-depth analysis in esports, especially. It's very important because sometimes, as much of an expert as I might be on most of these video games, it happens really quickly, and it's very helpful to have an expert break it down using cool sort of visualization tools to help me understand exactly what happened. We've also found that these segments provide a lot of commercial value for our customers to sort of get a sponsor in on that sort of a segment. Inception Live is another additional add-on that you can bring into this workflow. It allows you to not only do all your production planning, so creating your rundowns and timing and everything you need to do there, but you can also do a lot of really clever social media integration, such as like hashtag scraping. You can do polling and see live polls going up and down on your graphics if you also incorporate that with Expression. You can even time tweets. For example, if you know when you're going to roll a feature about one of the players in the tournament, you can link a tweet to when you roll that video live on the air. Inception will also send out tweets and updates to all of the various sort of social feeds for you. And then also we can add Voyager, which is our engine that can do really amazing AR presentations. We can do complete virtual sets. In esports, it's especially cool where we can bring characters to life. Imagine if it's a fighting game, and a big part of fighting games is the character selection part before they actually fight. Which champion is he going to play as? And we can render 3D the champion he actually chooses standing next to him, right, in the arena, which is pretty cool. And especially cool is it does support external data connectivity the same way Expression does. So the games can potentially actually communicate directly with Voyager to tell really, really good stories. So to talk a bit more again about the multi-language keying that we were doing on this show, we had an English stream, we had a Portuguese stream, and we also had a Spanish stream. But again, that all had to be done by a single operator, and that was Greg. And the way that Greg was able to do that was using some smart tools that the ROS workflow enables. First of which is data link. So he was able to update all three packages simply by updating his English package. So every time there was any sort of a name change or he needed to switch teams or anything like that, all he had to do was update it in English, and then the Portuguese and the Spanish packages were manually, or not manually, I'm sorry, automatically updated by the fact that he had done it in English because they were data linked to just be translated into their respective languages. And then the other way he was able to do that was with ROStalk. So with a single keystroke, he hits the graphic in English on his main sequencer, and it will also send a command to the other expression engines that he mentioned to fire the Spanish and the Portuguese as well. And so you get guaranteed in-sync playback across all of these engines. Now, graphics is obviously only one part of that. You've also got the technical director, that was Logan, and Logan has to cut 3 shows at once. Well, how is he going to be able to do that? Keep in mind, he's got 1 channel of expression graphics per language. He's got the dedicated playback channels per language, which are playing out, again, regionalized commercials, translated versions of the video features that they were rolling about their players and their stories. And he also had a dedicated caster cam. It's like the booth camera. The casters are the game announcers in esports, per language as well. So the way he was able to do that was through a lot of custom control macros on the Carbonite. So big major cues like that were all done on these custom controls. When he cuts to the English casters, for example, for stream 1, he's also cutting to camera 2, which is on the Portuguese casters for stream 2, camera 3, which is on the Spanish casters for stream 3, and so forth. The nice thing too is that all of these languages were receiving the same cue from the producer, because there was a single producer for all 3 of these languages, so that all 3 of the cues were hitting air at the same time, and there wasn't any problem there with timing or anything like that. Now, he also had to unify the screens and the broadcast. The screens were, there was a 2-sided center hung for the sort of just main display, but there was also the trophy stage that you saw in a couple of those shots in the video. That was all wrapped in LED, and the player booths were also LED. They were able to do that doing the pixel mapping and the graphic design in Expression Tessera, and the image processing was done on a Carbonite Mosaic. And the core operational control of this was done on a dashboard that Logan designed. The other nice thing, back to sort of condensing the workflows and data link being especially powerful, is that whenever Greg updated his broadcast graphics package in English, it also updated the screens graphics package so that anything was data linked. If the team has been changed for the broadcast, it's also been changed for the screens. And Logan operationally doesn't have to worry about it because it's all being taken care of automatically with these clever tools. Again, dashboard is the way that we were able to keep this easy on him, because many of you might be thinking like that, what a job to have to do. He's got to cut a broadcast with a director and a producer yelling at him the whole time, right? And then he's also got to do screens. How did he do that? Well, it was with dashboard. Again, dashboard can control theoretically limitless number of devices down to a single button push in a fully customizable UI. And so this is actually the dashboard here that Logan created for himself. As you can see, there were 20 or so different looks, different cues that he might have to hit based on what was happening in the tournament at that time. And so this was just sort of like a shot box for him, and it made it very easy. He never had to take a hand off of his panel to cut the broadcast. And so he just knows, okay, the red team's about to win. Boom, on a touch screen, hits red, game win, fires everything automatically on the entire in-screen or in-venue screen display production, and he's still now got his hands free to cut the broadcast as well. The last point that we'll make about this was the API integration from the game's data stream. I mentioned it earlier, Clash Royale is a lot like baseball. As you can see on this screen, there's a lot of stats to track in this, and it's not unique in esports either to have a lot of different stats that you could tell a story with. The great thing about this, though, again, is that the game was automating most of this data. So the game is telling us it's Surgical Goblin and Canario on the blue team versus One Crown and Thunder on the red team. So Expression knows, because it's data linked, to pull up the correct headshot, for each one of those players. And the game has been tracking how often these cards have been played and how often they've been spending their elixir. I won't get too inside baseball in terms of how the game works, but the game is already updating all of this. So whenever the producer wants stats, he just has to ask Greg to fire that graphic, and it's guaranteed to be accurate and on time because it was the video game that told it how to do that. So that kind of is, I think, a good summary of high impact, high efficiency, doing more with less in order to be more friendly towards some of these more budget conscious shows. I'll say on Thursday, please join me because to further sort of expand upon this topic, I'm going to be bringing in a couple esports experts, James Dean and Andrew Wagnitz. James Dean's the founder and CEO of ESL in the UK, and Andrew Wagnitz is the director of broadcast tech for a company called NGE here in Burbank. And NGE has been behind the scenes the production partner for a lot of the biggest esports events in the world. So they're going to talk about how they utilize these sort of smart tools that Ross is able to provide them to be more budget friendly, to do more with less, and still have really high production values while they're doing it. Now, I'm sure that some of you are also thinking as I've been going along this is great for the before times, before COVID-19 and for the on-site stuff, but we're not doing any on-site stuff now. And a lot of people still are not quite sure when they will be again yet either. So I would like to talk a little bit about what we've done in response to that. So our partners at Ross Production Services have created a solution that is hardware-based but operated in the cloud, and it allows them, the operators, to work from the comfort and safety of their own homes, but also to be on familiar tools, right? Stuff that they're used to using. And it also, in addition to the familiar workflows, it allows operators and production crews to do really high quality production value shows, even though they don't have access physically to their production control rooms. We've seen some of the cloud-based solutions out there, and they've always felt a little bit limited to us, which was why we really wanted to spool something up that could allow us to do very cool stuff and not just some simple box effects and things like that. So what do I mean when I say really high production value? Well, I've got another video to show you of exactly what we mean. This was a demo that we did for the game FIFA, and take a look.
We welcome you to the Ross FIFA Tournament Championship 2020. What has been a grueling 3-week tournament all comes down to this. The finals today, 2 players competing for $1 million. Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Sanders. Delighted to have you with us wherever you may be watching today. We are in the finals, $1 million on the line. Let's take a look at the bracket and see how we got here today. Stacy and Spencer going head-to-head in the semifinals. Stacy with a late comeback win over Mitch. Meanwhile, Spencer defeated Matt in dominant fashion in the semis. That brings them to the title match here this afternoon. And it is now time to meet our finalists. First, we'd like to welcome in Stacy. Stacy had that late comeback win over Mitch. Hello, Stacy. Our question for you, with that late comeback win, do you think you'll have any more late theatrics today in the finale?
I mean, hopefully not. It's always better to get ahead early and then use that momentum to carry you to a nice win. So, yeah, hoping for no cardiac arrests moving towards the end of this one.
So Stacy looking to get off to a better start, a faster start perhaps here today in the championship match. Meanwhile, Spencer has been dominant throughout this tournament, got that win over Matt in the semifinals. Spencer, what's your strategy here in today's final, and does anything change for you?
No, I'm just going to keep the same strategy. I was trying to keep control of the ball, not turn it over too much, don't get too aggressive on defense, and as the goal always is, put the ball in the net.
That possession-based style has been key for Spencer throughout this tournament. All right, so while our players get ready, I'm glad to be joined now by our analyst, the man with the plan, Yves Tolino. Always great to work with you, sir. Yves, it's always an exciting championship.
All right, so that was a bit of a taste of the sort of production values that we were able to do using this solution. Important to note that every single person involved in that production, from the person operating the virtual set to replay, audio, switching, engineering, we're all working from different parts of North America. We have had successful tests even with people in Australia and the United Kingdom. And the way that they do that is they access our control room, which is in Connecticut, via this production portal that we've designed. As you can see on the left, you can monitor any source, any multi-viewer, and get fully customized multi-viewers through this production portal. So as you can see, there's like a main production multi-viewer, there's the announcers, the casters in this case, because it was esports, and then graphics and replay wanted their own, virtual set needed his own multi-viewer, and so on and so forth. This is actually the talent interface, and I want to kind of make a note here that the great thing about this solution as well is that it doesn't require any sort of installs for the talent themselves. And that's important for anybody who's worked with talent. The talent want to come into the booth, they want to have all their tools at their disposal that they need, then be comfortable and just start working. And some of the other solutions that we've seen on the market have needed the talent to do software installs and kind of some complicated stuff that has caused a bit of headache and also slowed some productions down. So this looks exactly like all the same tool set that you would normally see as broadcast talent in your booth. You've got the ability to mute your mic for cough, you've got talkback, you can control your IFB volume for when your producer's talking in your ear, you can control your mix minus of how much of the program you want to be hearing, and you've got totally customizable multi-viewers as well, so you can be looking at anything you want. And the way that we do it, as well as we need to get the sources, obviously. The way that we do that is with a combination of WebRTC and RTMP streams. We like WebRTC for talent because it has a very low latency and it's able to keep things conversational. And we like RTMP for gameplay because although the latency is a little bit higher on RTMP, we find that the quality is hard to match. And one of the main things that you got to do in video games is understand that part of your job, besides telling these great stories and crowning these champions, is to sell copies of the video game. And so we really want to display the video game in its best possible light and make it look just like it would look if you were playing at home. As you can see, we're also able to send back discrete streams of multi-viewers, to all the talent, all the crew. We're also able to handle comms remotely like this. We can, by the way, just a side note, send physical panels for switching and stuff to technical directors' homes if that's how they prefer to do it, or we can also design custom dashboards to control all of the devices. So that kind of wraps it up in terms of how that works. Back to the sort of three tenets that we want to talk about today of what esports production needs from its technology. The next thing we'll talk about is, again, it has to be easy to use. Again, it's gamers who know how to tell these stories. And dollars to donuts, if you show a game expert, a guy who's spent a lot of time figuring out a particular video game, these panels to cut a show, the gamer's probably going to have an image come to mind in his head, and it's probably this. And then on the flip side of that, if you show a sports replay operator this, and you ask him I need you to get the jungle rotate to the top lane where Impact ganked Seraph using his R. The sports replay guy is also going to probably have a certain mental image, and it's probably going to be this. So what we need to do is we need to enable those gamers to work as efficiently as those 15-year veterans who've been in trucks and control rooms their whole careers. And again, the way that we do that is using Dashboard. Dashboard being totally flexible and able to unify the control of limitless devices within the ROS workflow, as well as other third-party external devices. The great thing, and like I mentioned earlier about scalability, is that you can create as few or as many panels as you need to meet the needs of your production. And so, again, you're an esports arena, Wednesday night you're doing a fighting game, you can get that down to a single operator. For example, our partners at the HyperX Esports Arena in Las Vegas are making heavy use of Dashboard to do exactly this. So as you can see, they've got a state-of-the-art LED display going on in here. They've got data populating these graphics on their wings. They've got a center hung with a full production going on with inserts and DVEs. And they also have to have discrete control over all 10 of these player pods with low latency video. And they're able to do that for their more simple shows with a single operator. And this is a picture of that single operator, Riley, doing the job on Friday Night Frags, which is one of the shows that they produce. As you can see, his main control surface here is Dashboard, and he's got the show down to basically a simple set of numbered cues. Q1 is at the top of the show, push 1, and 1's going to fire everything from the playback servers to the graphics to cutting to the right camera, et cetera, down the line, and all the way through to every single cue he needs to do. Now, that's a kind of a complicated dashboard build that we can provide for some of our clients. This is a dashboard that Riley ended up building himself. He was really interested in how all this worked. He wanted to know more. And so he started diving into the nuts and bolts. And now he's created this dashboard for sort of a mid-size show that they would do. And if you can see, he calls the dashboard TD2 graphics. That's because he's controlling primarily his graphics, but at times he's also taking control of the switcher frame in order to do box effects and different sort of squeeze backs and looks. So the core operational control is very simple. You got talent on the screen, you want to name him, take Lynn lower third. Director says lose it, you lose it. Okay. Casters are going to go down to the reporter who's standing in the pit, and she's got a story to tell about one of the players. With a single button push from Riley, it'll squeeze back the image. It will reveal a font mortise with name tags on right and left side, reveal her camera, and it can also send audio follow video commands if you build it that way, right? Again, we can control third-party devices like that. So with a single button push, they're doing this kind of complicated cue. And it's really exciting stuff when, again, you need guys like Riley, because Riley knows video games, he can tell the stories, but he hasn't spent an entire career learning production technology. Another example of dashboard being used very effectively is with our partners at ESL. Our friends at Rocket Surgery Virtual Productions partner with ESL often to do their augmented reality displays, and they do that using Dashboard. And they do some really amazing stuff. In fact, I've got some clips that I'd like to share with you to show you how complex and how amazing some of these looks can be. And then I'll show you how simple it is to actually operate that whole system.
into our gameplay for today. Round number 1 is underway. Stretch.
Bound and ready to go here as we load up and drive along. And speaking of driving along, we're going to be driving to Sandhawk here for our first game of the day. Plane doing its test flight here for the final game, round number 16. And of course, for a long...
Big thanks to our partners at Rocket Surgery Virtual Productions. They do amazing work, as you saw in that video. What's probably most impressive about that amazing work that they do for esports specifically is how easy it is to operate. And so this is actually the dashboard. A number of those highlights that you saw were from ESL's Katowice World Championship event for Intel Extreme Masters. It happens every year in Poland. And we partnered with them to do their AR for those shows. As you can see from this dashboard, it's very simple to actually operate on game day. Now, we built this, and clearly it's able to do quite a bit more than like Riley's dashboard that he built. But again, keep in mind, that was the first one that Riley had ever built himself. And the core operational control is very simple. Director asks for duo standings, boom, you click duo standings. Director says lose it, you lose it. So back to the 3 tenets, the last one that we really want to kind of dive into is that your solution's got to be flexible and scalable. The amazing thing about the ROS Esports solution and the ROS Sports and Live Events solution is that it is totally scalable based on whatever it is your venue or your production company needs. So we can get as small as a Graphite, which is our all-in-one production solution. It's got a 13-in, 8-output switcher. It includes expression, and it includes expression clips for playback. All you'd have to do to have a good small-scale system would be add to Instant Replay and add a Mira Plus server for that. And you've got a great kit for doing small shows where you're maybe connecting to the games remotely, and it's just your casters in studio with a couple cameras. The great thing, too, is that you can scale that even smaller than it sounds to being operated by a single person using Dashboard. So you can also scale it up, thanks to Dashboard, to have multiple or to have individuals at every single one of those positions. So you can do Dashboard on Wednesday night with your Graphite, and then on Friday, a more complicated show, you get a TD on a panel, you get an expression operator, you get a replay operator, you get an A1, and everybody at their various positions. You can also scale this up to do the biggest, baddest stuff in the world. This is really where we've kind of cut our teeth with this solution, is on these huge LED displays in big stadiums, big arenas in the United States. Again, though, it is the exact same DNA that they're using at HyperX Arena for a smaller display that we're using on the big giant stuff in all the huge sports stadiums that you see. And they're able to bring it all together with Dashboard. And so that kind of concludes my presentation. I appreciate everybody for being here very much. I know at this point that I've probably raised a lot of questions in people's minds, and I'm happy to try to answer those as best I can.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Cameron. It's awesome stuff in that presentation. It really is super cool. We have had a few questions that have come in. Just before we get to those, I think 1 or 2 people watching today maybe weren't seeing the videos. I've had a couple of people mention it, but just a couple. So if anyone did have any issues with that, we are making the webinar available on demand, and we will just double check that and make sure that the videos are cut in if there was an issue. But in terms of questions, excuse me, how many licenses products are required for the augmented reality that was used in the World Finals video that you showed?
Yeah, so in the World Finals video that we showed, the AR was just being done by Expression and Dashboard. It was 3 Expression engines that were bringing in that external data from the cameras to track the graphics and rendering everything.
Okay, thank you. I guess kind of associated with that is your playback channels, are your playback channels coming off an Expression or a Mira?
In the Clash Royale, they were coming off of Mira servers. However, they could absolutely come off of an Expression clip server. They could come off of a TRIA server. Any sort of playback device really can be triggered using the exact same workflows that we put to use on that event.
Okay, thank you. Gentleman here asking if there's a list of non-ROS equipment that can be controlled by Dashboard anywhere.
Yes, there's definitely a list. I won't go over it now because it's incredibly long, but some of the highlights are, we play nice with a lot of different sort of audio boards, water cannons, pyro, lighting. We can send commands to certain third-party lighting systems, quite a bit. PTZ cameras, you name it.
Okay, thank you. Quick question. You talked earlier on in your presentation about workflow, and I'm interested to know in terms of the observer or spectator room, what does the workflow look like for that?
Yeah, so I'm glad that you brought that up. Think of the observer room or the spectator room just as cameras that you have the option to cut to. The difference is that they're cameras that are operating in a virtual space of the video game itself. So oftentimes what you'll see happen is that you need a game expert who knows where to place those cameras within the video game. And so you'll see oftentimes like a sub switch, similar to in NASCAR, for example, where it's like an ISO director, right? And he's cutting all of those feeds and sending it up to the main PCR because the director of the stage show and the LED show usually will be a person from a broadcast or a big sort of arena display production background. They won't really know how to cut the video game as well. So we get a gamer to do the sub switch of the video game, like an ISO director. He sends it up to the main PCR where they incorporate it into the show. But it's not as scary as it sounds. It's just think of them as cameras. They're just another video source to cut to, except it's coming out of a computer instead of out of a camera.
Okay, thank you for that. Question here about the all-important topic of money. How does sports make money? Because obviously it's not traditional packaging rights in the same way as other sports.
Right. That's a very good question, and it's something that we're still working out. The main way is not through packaging rights and broadcasting rights like Stuart mentioned, but through just sponsorship. And so we're able to, for instance, Mercedes-Benz has been sponsoring a lot of ESL's big global events lately, right? And they are able to do sort of sponsored segments, big takeovers of the screens, the same way you would do for any sponsor in any arena. The other thing to just sort of understand about esports, and I touched on it a little bit earlier in my presentation, is that the main goal, truly at its deepest core of any esports production, is to sell more copies of the video game. So in that way, sometimes esports can be a loss leader for these companies, and that's totally okay because it's marketing, right? So if you're a company, I'll just use this as an example. These are not real numbers or real examples, but if you're Riot Games and you decide to invest 100 million into esports, you're okay with making 90 million back and losing 10 million because you just spent 10 million effectively to advertise your game to your core audience and keep it relevant in their mind, keep them playing, keep them making those in-game purchases, and so on and so forth.
Cool. Must be nice to be in a position not to have to worry about 10 million.
Well, I mean, again, those are just fabricated numbers.
Good question here. In terms of production technology in the future, in what ways do you think esports might actually help to drive and innovate from a production technology in years to come?
Sure. So I think one of the most exciting area for me personally is in what we're already starting to scratch the surface of, which is utilizing those data tools coming from the video games themselves to automate a lot of what we do from a production standpoint. I think that, look, the video game knows exactly everything that's happening. It's just zeros and ones as far as the video game is concerned, right? And it's sending that information somewhere. And so if we can create tools that allow us to condense these workflows even further, right, to where we know every single time, for example, in Counter-Strike, if somebody pops off for a 4K, right, the game knows that they did that. The game could theoretically tell then a smart replay server, rewind it, capture all 4 of those kills, cut them together using dissolves from 2 different angles, and then roll it back when an operator says it's time to roll it back, right? That theoretically could happen. And so that could create even more efficiencies for our sort of production. And again, making sure if it's the video game that does it, there's also no room for error, right? Not no room for error, really no possibility of error, because the game, it's going to get it right every time. It's programmed to do that, right? There's so you take away some of that possibility of human error in that way. And then I think the other area is just more AR. I think it's so cool what we're able to do. And if we were able to take that AR to an even further level, where I don't want to get too inside baseball or philosophical here, but we're not on the same medium that sports and entertainment has been for the last 50 or 60 years. We're not on television. We're on devices. We're on laptops. We're on things that are more interactive, right? And so how interactive can we get? Can we create totally bespoke productions for every single audience member by putting them into the video game using these AR tools, right? And in that way, they're able to maybe, you know, I don't want to say direct their own show because nobody wants to make their own sandwich, but sort of maybe customize the graphics presentation that they're getting. You know, or I'm more interested in this guy's stats, so I want to see his stats. Right? Like how can we kind of go in that direction? And these are the things that kind of excite me about it.
I mean, I guess in the general sports world, fan engagement and bringing fans closer to the action and personalizing the experience has been a hot topic for the last couple of years. So why would esports be any different, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And esports kind of already is a more natural fit for it too, right? Because one of the great things, just to touch quickly again upon the observers, is that in a video game, there is no physical space being taken up by this observer camera. It can be anywhere, it can be everywhere, and it can teleport, you know, without having to actually cut on a switcher panel. You can just take your camera in the video game to another location altogether, which makes it totally limitless, right? If there's no restrictions, where would you put your cameras? You know, and that's both daunting and exciting from a director's standpoint, right? So.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much. I think that brings us towards the end of our questions, so we can round off the Q&A there. Before we came online, actually, before we started the webinar, Cameron and I were having a conversation about esports and about I guess the similarities in ethos between esports and punk rock. Cameron actually co-wrote a very interesting article drawing the parallels between those two worlds together, and that was published by Esports Insider. So if you have a spare few minutes, do try and dig that article out on the web. It's a very entertaining read and definitely worth your time. Thank you very much for all of the questions that were submitted today. We appreciate it. Thank you very much to everyone who joined us today. We know that your time is very valuable, and we always appreciate you spending it with us. We will be back again with you on Thursday, July the 9th, and carrying on the esports theme, Cameron is going to be joining us back again. He will be talking with some industry-leading esports content producers to talk about how they use broadcast equipment to do more with less. telling the stories and capturing the excitement with the same level of proficiency and technical knowledge as operators who have 20+ years of on-the-job experience. Finally, just before we go, the moment that some of you may have been waiting for, we are giving away, as many of you will know, giving away 100 pairs of the new Ross Socks 3.0, freshly upgraded for 2020. You'd normally get them at a Ross trade show booth near you, but your special promo code, which is valid for 7 days, is Ross Live 2020 Esports 03. That is all one word. We'll put it on the outro bumper, but it is Ross Live 2020 Esports 03. Use that code, the online Ross online merchandise store, and you can have a swanky pair of Ross socks on us, but please do be quick. The code is only valid for 7 days, and once the 100 pairs have gone, they are gone. Thanks again to Cameron for his time and for that excellent presentation today. As I said earlier, we will be back with you again in 2 days' time. In the meantime, that is everything from us today. Thanks a lot for joining us. Stay safe and goodbye.